Four, three, two. Hello, everybody. This is your host, Patricia Tomlinson. Thank you so much for tuning into the dialogue. Thank you so much for you guys that have been tuning in and listening to this special segment and series dedicated to depression. This is for the purpose of October, which we know this is the month dedicated to mental health and depression awareness, where you are able to go and get screened if you feel like you are battling with depression or some type of mental illness. Please understand that in the time of when COVID was taking place, a lot of people had to be sheltered and tucked in, and COVID did a lot to people mentally. So it is good to go and see if you actually need assistance with depression or any other mental illness, because that's just life and it happens. Okay. So in this series, I'm actually interviewing several beautiful women, which are guests on the podcast, and they're just going to share their story. That's what they're here for. They're here to share their story and how they have been impacted by depression and how they have overcome. So thus far, we have interviewed three different women, all of them very active in the community. You can go and check out those podcasts on Spotify, Anchor, Apple, Google, and you can also look at my Facebook or Linktree on Instagram to see other links that are attached to those podcasts so you can listen to them. But I'm not going to drag this out. I'm going to go ahead and get straight into the information. Today, we currently have Alisha on the line with us to help us understand about depression and how she overcame. So, hello, Alisha, and welcome to the dialogue. How are you today?
I'm good. How are you? Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. I am so good. So, this particular person is very special because we actually used to go to middle school together. And so, I've known her for a very long time. She's a beautiful person, and to see what she is actually doing right now is actually very inspiring. But we'll get more into that a little bit later. Okay. So, Miss Alisha, I talked to you a couple weeks ago because I wanted to interview you in regards to depression. So, please explain to our guests or help them understand your definition of depression. When you think about depression, what's the words or definition that comes to you?
Depression is I would say it's like a variety of emotions. Some people just equate it to sadness, but it could be other things like isolation, anger, confusion. It's I think it's just a variety of emotions that you're really, sometimes you're not sure why you have them and what caused them. But ultimately it is, it could be sadness, loneliness, anything like of that sort. It just depends on, it depends on the day.
I agree. And just to add to that and piggyback and add on to that, it actually says feelings of severe despondency and dejection, a long and severe recession in economy or market. But the words that are used, because depression can come for two terms. It can be economic, but it can also be a mood. We're talking about the mood of depression. So it says melancholy, misery, sadness, unhappiness, sorrow, and woe. Those are a couple more definitions. So I want to ask you, because you've had some experiences, personal experiences with depression. When you were going through, how did you know that you were depressed, or did you not know?
Um, I've had a couple of experiences. After so long, I knew on my own that I wasn't feeling like myself. There were times that people who I was around on a daily basis kind of ended up saying something to me like, hey, you seem a little different. Is everything okay? Like, what's wrong? Can I help you? When the people around you, like your friends and family, they start noticing things, or different people who may not even associate with each other are saying the same thing about your behavior or your demeanor changing, then I feel like it's pretty credible and something you should look into. And that was definitely a turning point for me to actually just look more into it and see what I could do and how I could change my narrative.
I understand. And I do like the fact that you said credible, because a lot of times, people can be so judgmental or want to project on you what's going on with themselves. Like if someone's having a bad day, it's like, okay, you don't seem like you're doing good, but it's actually that person. So I like the fact that you emphasize credible and that you actually honored what they said to you to do introspection into yourself, because that's ultimately what it's about. Depression is something that other people can sometimes see, but it's also silent at times, meaning that you don't see it on people sometimes. And this is why a lot of times people can just go and commit suicide because nobody saw the signs. So that was a maturity step for you, to not take it personally and really acknowledge that you knew something was going on from the people that loved and cared about you. And
Absolutely.
right. And I think that's what this awareness is about, to give signs to other people just in case someone is around them and they don't know. A couple weeks ago, this was actually inspired because I was on Facebook. It was a young gentleman on there, and he was just detailing all of his life, and it just sounded so sorrowful. And I got in the DMs, and I ended up talking to him because he was actually talking about committing suicide, like he just wanted it to be over. And I don't know what caused me to do it, but just having a heart, I went in his DMs and talked to him and was like, hey, this is not the route to go. If you could just get over this dark hump, we'll get better. And 2 days later, he was in a different place. But it was so sad to me that he had to get on Facebook and complain about his life and the people in it. And it took a stranger, you get what I'm saying? A stranger to actually jump in his DMs like, hey, don't do this. So are we ignoring and overlooking people that are battling with depression? So
I don't. Oh, is that a question?
no, that's just simply acknowledging the people that are in your life, that they didn't overlook you, that they cared enough to stop and to pause, pay attention to you because they cared. So
right, exactly.
And that feels good because
every,
this. Go ahead. I'm so sorry.
I didn't know if that was a question that you were asking as far as if we're ignoring it because everyone, he may have not had, everyone doesn't have a support system or have people who are around them. A lot of people could be loners or their family doesn't live nearby. So sometimes when I see people venting on social media, of course, a lot of people are like, this is not the place, but what if that's their only place? You have tons of friends on there. There's somebody who, at least one person who can be able to help you.
I agree. And I think that's part of an outcry. If you have to be on social media and do that, a lot of times there are good people that notice that and they're not just trying to be nosy. They're really trying to help. But that is a lot of times why people do commit suicide during depression, because nobody sees them. They're crying out for help.
So, right, exactly.
So that was actually one of my next questions for you. Did anyone else that you would know that you were battling with depression? We have a different perspective from you and your story because the women that I've talked to thus far, it wasn't people that noticed it was them. So this is beautiful that someone else saw you and that you were in a dark place and that you needed some light.
Exactly. I think no one knew the extent of how I felt, but people knew, what I was dealing with, and they didn't treat me any differently, more or less just there for support or a listening ear, helping me come up with solutions. Everyone's not as fortunate to have that. So if you have to go on Facebook or whatever social site, that's all you know, or go to your church or whatever your religious affiliation is, or go online to see and look up what you can do. I think the biggest thing is just to try to come up with a solution to not stay there.
And I was actually going to ask you, because I heard that, but that was actually going to be my next question in regards to faith. How did faith play a
Exactly.
role in your journey of healing, or did it play a role in your journey of healing?
It absolutely did. You know, in the Christian faith, you have to lay you lay it all out to Jesus. Lay it to God. Tell him everything is on your heart. You'll be surprised who he sends your way to help you, because we're not meant to be in this life alone. Like, we're all supposed to love and help each other. I was one of my battles. I would go to this church. I had just started going to this church, and I was going by myself because my family was going to a different church, but it was something to tell me to come to this church. And I was going there every week. I would, if they said, let's go to the altar, I was going to the altar and having them pray for me. And every week I was sitting in like the front row, and I couldn't even like really hold my head up. And one day this lady, I don't even know who this lady is to this day, she came and she saw me and she started praying over me, and it was in the middle of church. So faith does, I know everyone has their own beliefs, but my faith, my God helped me get through it because he sent those people to help me. That was a turning point for me, because I'm a mother. Sometimes you have to put on a happy face when you feeling at your lowest, but you can't let your kids see you like that, because you don't want them. They're going to hurt for you automatically. So that was my time where I could just be my authentic self, and God sent that woman to pray over me in the middle of a sermon.
That just so touched me, and I'm gonna tell you why, because that's like intimate and personal. So I thank you for going that deep to share that. But on another one of the podcasts, I was talking to another young lady, and she actually explained, and you guys, if you're listening, you can go back for that podcast. It was the depth of depression, and it was part 2. Her name was Tempest Moore, and she was actually explaining how her depression landed her in the hospital. And it was a lady that came into her room and either was talking to her or praying for her. And that just is so beautiful, that God can see someone in a dark place that is so deep, like you said, you can even hold up your head, but he will send a light to you, somebody to stand in a gap for you, to pray for you. Like, you were going to church, you had no idea that that was going to happen, that divine intervention where God was going to send somebody to carry your burden with you and to pray for you. So
exactly.
I mean, and that's the whole purpose of this podcast, to try and bring light into somebody's life, because some people are not going to go to church. Some people, they're just not going to. Let's just be honest. But this is a way to get some type of prayer to them, some type of hope to them, because depression can get very dark, very lonely, very isolating. And this is just a way to just put it right in their face, right on their phone through this podcast. So I appreciate you sharing that. Now, after that experience with the lady, and she prayed for you, did you feel an immediate change? Was it things that you had to implement and do after that? What was I understand you understand the prayer, but was it practical tools that you had to keep implementing to help you stay out of that dark place?
Yeah. So, some people, their solution is just pray about it. I mean, that's just the start of it, because now it's like, what are you going to do about it? So after that lady prayed for me, I automatically just felt better, where I could lift my head up and look at the pastor, and every sermon seemed to be for me during the whole fight. Like, that's why you never know who God will put in your life to help you in a time of despair, or your time of maybe what some may say weakness, in your time of need. You never know who he will place in your life for you. So the prayer is definitely the foundation, but it's also the works. You have to put the work in. Now, I mean, it's not like just going to happen overnight, but you have to really want to get out of it on your own if you're able to. Just taking the steps needed, like seeking a therapist, not feeding into things that are negative because your mental is fragile at the time. That's also important.
I completely agree. I think that I use analogies to break it down and understand. When you say fragile, I think about like an egg. An egg, the shell is very hard, but if you drop it or hit it against something at the right pressure, it breaks. And that's how I look at circumstances and situations, like it's pressure and it's knocking on the mental, and then it just breaks. Someone, and the breaking point can be somebody dying. We had one young lady on here that talked about how a loved one of hers, someone that she was involved with in a relationship, committed suicide. That broke her, and she went through depression after that. So it's losing money, losing a job, losing friends, even losing your relationship with God, because He is light. I know there are times when I go through that, when I'm just caught up with working, or, trying to go to school or take care of my daughter or just live life and not let so much of the outside things come in and consume me. It can get dark. And then, like you said, you never know who God will send, and He just pulls you out into the light. But you got to have a structure and a strategy and a way to cope. So there are some surprises coming up that I'm going to be offering for people to get a better strategy. So you definitely want to stay tuned for that. Did you take any classes? Did you do any prayer journals, meditation? What was your strategy? You can just give us, if it was one thing that you felt like you implemented that really worked to help keep you out that state. What was your strategy?
Doing what makes me happy and not focusing on what doesn't. So journaling, and I actually went to therapy, and found a Black therapist. Okay. That was just my preference. Some relates. And just find somebody you feel who maybe can relate to you. So even if you're not Black, like you're white, find a white someone that a white therapist. I don't want to.
No, it's okay. We're not throwing no shade. It's not discriminatory. She's just speaking her truth, which we absolutely want. But I agree. I've done both. I've had a counselor. She was Caucasian. She said God told her to do certain things and empower Black women. And I kid you not, it was one season in my life, and that's exactly what she did. And it was actually therapeutic because I was going through a lot of racism at different jobs and stuff. And so to have her there, like, you're awesome, you're great. And it wasn't just because she was getting paid to say it. She meant it from her heart. So, but I also have a Black therapist, so seeing the two and the two different perspectives, I will say it is a little bit different, but you find what you prefer or what works for you. You might have to shop around for a counselor too. Just because you go the first time, that might not be a hit situation where you might not click with that person, but don't give up, if you're looking for somebody. So, and I commend you for saying that too, because a lot of people, back in the day, wasn't nobody going to see they say, I'm not going to see no shrink. I'm not going to see no counselor. Ain't nothing wrong with me. This is my thing. This is my thing. There's been times when there was things wrong with me, and there's been times that it wasn't. But just to have someone there that doesn't know me personally, that I can feel safe with, that's not out telling my business to make me look bad so they feel better, that was the therapeutic part for me. So it was like it was a safety net for me.
Yes.
And also to that too, depression is like a wave. Depression can sometimes be normal, but it has abnormal qualities. For instance, when I just left my job, I was depressed for 3 days because I was in the dark. You know what I mean? I didn't know what to do after that. right? And then boom, the podcast comes. So darkness is basically you can go through a long time of darkness until your light comes, which will be the solution. So I hear you saying, Alisha, that you had a support system, you developed a strategy. Of course, God was involved. And I don't know why, I just feel like you knew you had to do it also because of your children. Was that another driving factor, a motivating factor?
Yeah. If you're, my children was the main motivating factor amongst everything else in my life. Things with my friendships and relationships with others. I noticed there was quite a shift because I wasn't mentally at my best. So I know, like I learned during my process that if you're not mentally well, you can't be your best self in any aspect.
And you're absolutely right. I guess the tricky question is, how does a person know if they're mentally well? And it's funny I say that because I was on Facebook one day and this man just simply put out this statement. He said, a lot of people on Facebook are crazy and they don't even know it. And he was basically alluding to their statuses of what they post. So that's the tricky part. You being humbled enough to assess yourself as a person to say something is off. You know what I mean? And not and realizing, if you look back at your childhood and your life, getting to the root of why am I depressed? You got to be able to answer the question, because it's just so dark sometimes. If you can get the question, the root is the answer that you receive. For me, I battled with depression because I was always by myself. You know, in our household, I didn't have a connection with any of my family. I was a loner. I had went through being molested for a long time by family members. So all of that, on top of being 12 and 13, you know, getting a job at 14 and moving out of my mom's house to take care of my grandmother, I didn't have anybody. So that was dark for me, you know, especially mentally and emotionally. So I'm not going to ask you what your situation was that made you depressed. If you want to talk about it, you can. But I want to ask you, when did you discover your root? Was it during the prayer?
Therapy helps you. Therapy helps you discover your root. There was many things that triggered the depression, because one of the main factors was losing my mother. I didn't know I knew she had breast cancer, but I didn't know she was gonna be gone so soon. Yes. Because she was fine the day before she went to the hospital. So that a sudden loss so large, it takes a toll on you, especially if you are having to organize everything and be strong for everyone else.
I completely agree with you. I've talked to several people who have lost their mother. I've talked to people that lost their father as well. But in regards to the mother, there are a lot of people after that they just feel lost. Even after planning the services and things like that for the funeral, they said that's a level of strength that you have to put on to do so much, that especially if you're not prepared. You know, some people's family can be sick for a long time and they're telling them like, okay, they have a couple months left or a couple weeks or whatever. But if it's just so abrupt, your mind doesn't even have time to prepare for what's going to happen, you know? So I don't understand that story personally. My story is a little bit different, but I've heard how traumatizing it is to lose a mother. So, you know, I'm sorry for that. Happy to see that you're in a better place, but I think it's still a process to getting used and accommodating to that type of absence. So, I'm glad you found your root. What I will say, because we have a couple minutes left, what I'm going to say is that depression has so many different layers to it. I consider depression like a death, meaning someone can die and they, that's the end of their life. But sometimes when a person is going through depression, it feels like it's just over because there's like a loss of activity, there's a loss of passion, there's a loss of, desire. Some people don't even want to have light. I remember when I was 16, I used to tuck my curtains so tight that it looked like it was dark outside because there was no light in my room. And I would be in the bed like a little old lady watching Golden Girls with some type of snack, just watching TV. You know, that was not a life, you know. So when your depression, how were you were able to slowly get back into normalcy of doing things and getting an appetite for life?
Yeah, a lot of times it was I had to I forced myself to do some things because everyone is different, but some days I made myself. And some days I wasn't strong enough to make myself. Some days I didn't want to get out the bed. But, if you have to work, you can't keep calling off. Or your kids things, you can't not get them. So those days were hard, but I made myself push through. And it's not always that easy. But some of the days, that's what I did. And some of the days, I just wasn't that successful.
Listen, I completely understand. I think a lot of people will understand that because I'm a piggyback. I think that's also where the suicide comes in because, like you said, you had to make yourself get up and show up for life. Some people just get tired of having to get up and show up. They're tired of the fight. Right. Some people, I'm not even going to say it's a thing of weakness. Sometimes life can beat a person down so bad that they don't want to show up for that type of life anymore. And people don't have the tools and the strategy to change it. And they think that's just the end. And so I'll just say that's probably what people are missing: better coping skills, tools, and strategy. And so I think children are a blessing. I'll tell you why. Because after I lost my job, my daughter, I didn't lose it, I left. My daughter, because she needed so much tending to, I had to make myself get up and tend to her. And she's such a happy baby. So it helped me because I was able to see her smile. So it helped me smile. I was able to see her. And it helped me. It helped pull me out of that dark place, because I'm like, man, I just need a day just to lay around and rest and do nothing. But when you got a baby, you running around doing changing diapers and doing everything for them and laughing and playing and it was therapeutic for me. So I understand that, and some people don't understand that until it happens. Like, wow, my child, I've heard so many women say, my child saved my life. And they don't understand that. But we're probably going to have to go into a part 2. We do have a couple minutes left. I really want to make sure that I get your business information to let people know what you're doing and what you do. So we're going to go ahead and go into a part 2. So give us 1 second. Okay, everybody, thank you so much for staying tuned. This is part 2 with our interview with Miss Alisha. We were actually just talking about the importance of children, and my little daughter has just actually woken up, which is so funny. But the importance of children actually while you are going through depression. I've heard so many women say that their children have saved their lives. When it comes to depression, I absolutely believe that that can be a catalyst for a child. God knows when to send a child. If you ever notice when people pass away, if you notice before they're passed, a lot of times there is a child that's born or about to come into the world. And children bring so much joy and so much love and so much happiness. They actually can help you get through a lot of pain. So was that your story as well?
Yes. that was they were a big reason why I got through.
Yeah. And I want to make sure, even before we end anything, you are a photographer. And you took you took me and my daughter's pictures recently. This is actually how we were able to hook up and talk about the podcast. When you came into your time of light, did the photography have anything to do with that?
Yes, to an extent. When I was going through this, my most recent, it was postpartum. I have a 3-year-old as well, and I have a 12-year-old.
Okay.
I haven't had a baby for a long time, so so I was going through postpartum depression. So I wasn't taking photos at the time.
Okay.
Because I just had a baby.
So
that didn't. I only did a few photos of my kids, so it did kind of help bring me some joy, but it wasn't the main
Okay.
factor.
I always say this, like, well, this is what I believe. I can always see when a person is either getting fought with depression or some type of darkness, if they can make it over to the other side, it's like a shedding of their old self, and it could prepare them for the new that's going to come into their life. It doesn't feel like it because it's so dark, but I say every tunnel is meant to come out on the other side of light. If you could just get through that bypass or that transition, there's going to be light at the end. And a lot of times for me, like I was detailing about losing my job. I keep saying lose it. I didn't lose my job. I quit my job. But when that happened, it was dark. And then on the other side was the podcast. But I had to go through the depression to be able to talk to other people about it. My daughter helped me. I actually isolated, because that's just what I do. When I go through something, I pull away from people. I do talk about it, but until I get perspective about it, a lot of things don't actually help me. I have to get the perspective, which is the light, and then it removes that depression or sadness from me. And so now you're doing photography, and I want to make sure that for business purposes, because it's amazing. A lot of the women that I have had an opportunity to interview, they have some type of business that they do. One lady, she baked cakes. Baked cakes, cookies, and cheesecake. I actually put her information up on my Facebook because I had an opportunity to eat one of her cheesecakes. It was so good. You do photography. We had a community health worker, and the list is just going to go on and on. So a lot of women have found purpose outside of their depression. Would you say that you found purpose outside of your depression?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And with that being so, you feel more fulfilled? Like, because depression can come in waves. You know what I mean?
It can.
So
yeah, I feel more. Yes, I do.
Do you think that, because most people don't understand that you can be saved and still go through depression? Do you think that's true?
Oh yeah, it doesn't matter what your lifestyle is. Like if it happens, it happens. Because life can happen at any time. Or some people are just, some people are clinically depressed, and that's something that's another topic. But life can happen at any time. Doesn't matter who you are or what you do. And no one's exempt.
That's so true. I honestly say that we're all connected because we're human beings. But one thing I can honestly say that I noticed that a lot of people connect about is their pain. And unfortunately, we all go through pain. And for me, it's like once I come out of something, it's like, what am I going to do with this? What am I going to do to use this to help somebody else? And I've gone through different spouts. Like you said, clinical depression is completely different. Some people get medicated, some people don't. But ultimately, until you get to the root of it, that's when a lot of it can come off of you. Everybody's is different. I've known of people that have been so depressed, They don't do their hair. They don't get out of the bed. They don't wash up. They don't brush their teeth. They don't take care of their self as far as their hygiene. Um, I had never understood that. But just depending on how much darkness you're involved in, it definitely can get that bad. And it'll just creep up on you. So, like I said, I'm grateful for this podcast and being able to draw awareness because these are some strong women that I'm talking to. They have families, they have jobs, they have careers, they have husbands. The other young lady that I interviewed, she was the first one. She went through it because she was working from home. And she turned her depression into an opportunity to create a fitness opportunity where now she's helping other women lose weight. Because when you gain weight, that can make you depressed as a woman or in a man. So yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Do you think that was part of your postpartum? Like when you had it, do you think that was part of your postpartum?
Yeah, yeah. To an extent, I wasn't sick. Yeah, to an extent, it was. I've always kind of had that type of battle, anyways, with my weight. So exercising is also like therapeutic as well. You just have to make yourself do it.
Yeah.
And get on the routine. But that played a part.
Listen, I was gonna say that'd be it for me. Like, when I was pregnant and I was having my daughter, it was so funny because afterwards I wasn't depressed because I lost like so much weight. Because they were trying to say I was a diabetic, so I had to change my eating completely. And I wasn't depressed about the weight. It was more about the treatment that I received from people and from doctors. So most people think postpartum depression. I think they just equated so much to the baby coming. Mine wasn't because of that. It was because of the people that said they were going to show up and didn't, and the doctors, and just being mistreated. So postpartum depression can be from different reasons. That was my little small story. But at the end of the day,
yes, no, I'm agreeing with you 100%.
Mm-hmm. I mean, the baby was a joy. She was my dream come true.
Yeah, the baby brings you joy though, because they're gonna love you at your worst.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Like, people at your ugliest.
Listen, because you listen.
You at your worst, they're gonna want you.
Listen.
More than anyone else.
In the morning time, breath not all the way there. They want to climb up in your face. They want to be held and cuddled. You ain't gotten a shower. You haven't done what you needed to do for yourself. They want you. And I think that that's a joy in itself. But I think sometimes with the selfishness of people, as far as when a woman has a baby and they still need and want things and they can act like they're your children, but they're not. That is another level of depression now that I understand it. Like, most people don't understand, like you have a whole nother human being to take care of. Nobody can be your mom too, So
right.
Because I know you and I also did, when we did talk about doing the session, we didn't just talk about depression. As far as your mom at the time, I didn't know that was why you were, going through your spot of depression. But the postpartum, we did touch on that briefly because you said you had different instances. But to me, right. Yeah, I mean, and the postpartum thing, because that is a dark time. This baby, it's so stressful for a woman. You're waiting for your baby to come out. You just want your baby to be healthy. You want a safe delivery. And to me, it's just the inconsistency. And people are inconsiderate when you're pregnant.
Yeah.
And I think that I understand depression on so many different levels now. It's circumstances. That's personally what I believe. I think it's circumstances.
Mm-hmm.
So
it is.
So now we've gone through your coping skills, how God helped you. Do you have any recommendations, any other recommendations? Because you've said so much in this series about, working out, how it can help your mental, having prayer, meditation, having a support system. Any other recommendations that you would like to give?
Yeah, you need to detox from social media as a whole for a little while too, and take time to focus on yourself, because we tend to, you may be reading things and think they don't affect you, but so much goes into your subconscious, especially negativity, because sometimes social media can have an adverse effect. So eventually it can eat you up inside, like just so much. If you're just taking in so much negativity, you're around negative people. Even if they're not negative towards you, just the people you surround yourself with, the things you feed your brain, that plays a part, and that's why you should detox from social media periodically, even if it's for like a week, just to reset. I was gonna say something else, but yeah, that's my other thing. Definitely detoxing from social media and detoxing from people.
Listen.
You have to give a break. Sometimes you just have to take a break from people, because sometimes people are stressful, or cut ties with certain people. Some people are just not worth it.
I love that you put that just so blatant. Like, it's not worth it. They're not, and I agree.
Some people aren't. That's just how I am. Like, that's just the truth. Some people are just not worth it. That doesn't make them a bad person. That just means they're not for you. Some friends, you're not compatible with some friends. We're not compatible as friends. But you know what? You're not a bad person. You're just not for me.
Exactly. And just let it go in peace. And I saw this post today, because that can make you depressed. I know there has been times and seasons in my life where God was, and I'm not even going to lie, because there's so much that I go through. Sometimes I just come completely off of social media. So I'm like, Lord, I don't even know how this is going to work, because you know me, once I start getting full of too much trash or garbage, instantly social media is gone. So if I need to come away, or if I need to think, because social media has a way of projecting into your mind the way that it wants you to think. I know people sometimes that are scoured through memes, and they'll find something and they think it applies to them in their circumstance or situation, and they'll go with that just because it's on the internet. As far as knowing how to discern or decipher what's for you and what's not for you, it'll take your mind somewhere dark. You got trends that come out, where it's like people, as far as images with women's body, first breasts were a big thing back in the 90s, and then it was like hips, and now it's butt, and then even that time it was like the little slit in between the woman's legs, if it was just open just enough. And all these fads, all these fads and trends that come in and come out, you know what I mean? It just drives a person crazy. It literally will drive you crazy if you can't meet the status quo of what other people like, because that's how you get likes. That's how you get people to follow you. You know what I mean? That can be dark. Yeah, it can be dark, but there are other things. People do follow for other reasons, like information. I know I've seen some pages where they don't upload a picture about themselves. There are no pictures, but they have a lot of quality information, so you just got to know what's for you. But like you said, you got to detox from social media and from people. It takes a mature person to do that, though. So
yeah, it does.
Do you think that, and that's probably a segment I said I'm going to launch into that and do that, as far as the importance, as far as watching your eyes and your ear gates, and what you put in there and what you take out of it. That just actually came because of the series with the Jeffrey Dahmer. A lot of people were commenting about that. I haven't seen it. Have you had an opportunity to see it?
No, I didn't watch it yet, because I was with my kids. I didn't want to watch that around them. And sometimes I just don't. I choose not to watch things right away, because they're not good for you. So especially not to go into another topic, but like the shootings of unarmed black men.
Absolutely.
Like, I can't watch that anymore.
Mm-hmm.
I can't watch those videos anymore because it's not good. Like, when something like that, that's why I said sometimes you have to detox, because when something like that occurs, like something very tragic, I mean, there's other tragedies that are going on as well, but something that's tragic and really triggering for you, that's why sometimes you just have to disconnect.
Well,
maybe come back later.
Yeah, I don't think you're going into another subject. I think it's all important because we're talking about mental illness. There are so many things that can make a person mentally ill, and watching stuff like that is another catalyst that can cause a person to go mentally ill. It can cause fear. It is dark, and it can cause you to want to isolate and be by yourself because you're afraid to go outside or you don't trust people, So I get it. I definitely get it. It's about trying to purify your mind in a world full of like commercialized materialism, just so much added stuff that doesn't have to be there. I'm in this place right now where I'm just trying to make everything just simple, you know. In regards to social media, now I'm getting more of a structure. I say when I get up in the morning, I don't want the first thing that I do to be social media, check messages, or anything like that. I need to get up, pray, read, work out, tend to my daughter, eat breakfast, get my mental ready, and then go in, because you have to filter out. But it's also the same thing what you said about detoxing from people, because a lot of social media is comprised of people. You don't know, what they're into, what they're doing, so you just got to be careful. That goes back to connections. What are you connecting with? Who are you connecting with? If you always feel sad or sorrowful every time you talk to somebody, misery loves company. That might not be somebody that you need to keep communicating with all the time. I'm going to ask you this. Do you believe that when you are coming to a place of mental health, that there are more people that love a person that's miserable or in a dark place, and there are like a few people that you can keep around? Because I know for me, if I'm talking about bad things or going through something, it seems like it's so many people there. But then when I start changing and get my perspective, it just seems like we're distant. We're not connected anymore.
Yeah, it depends on your circle, but overall, yeah, like that's even if we even go back to social media, for example, you can post something positive, something happy, and then you could post something, sad and miserable, messy, anything like that. For one, if you post something happy, sometimes people question your happiness. Like, is it fake? You're not happy. You're fake happy. You're not happy for real. Even if you don't even know this person, people often question your happiness because of their own lack of happiness. But then you get less. Sometimes you get less feedback. You post something good, like, oh, I just got a job, I just started a new business, my kid is walking now, or I don't have, I'm not sick when I thought I was, versus you arguing on Facebook Live with somebody. You're going to get all the views and all the likes, and, people are going to be inboxing you like, hey, what's going on, and so people do kind of more, I would say people more feed into negativity than positivity, especially in that aspect, and in real life sometimes, but that is contingent on who you have around you.
Yes. And I think this is the reason why these podcasts are important at this point, because a lot of things that people can do just I'm not going to say it's simple every time you're going to change your life, because some friendships I've had to let go were very hurtful. Some changes that I've had to make, environmental changes, social changes, relational changes, those were very hurtful, but it was all for my mental well-being. This takes too much from me. It's too time consuming. And I notice for me, sometimes when I get around people, I can start to think or feel how that person might think or feel. So I really have to stay away from certain things and protect myself in a certain capacity, if that makes sense. Um, but I think this was very helpful because we touched on two different. You talked about depression from the standpoint of your mother, losing your mother, short term notice, and you also talked about the postpartum and you gave strategies. So I think that this podcast was very helpful because some people are going through depression and they don't know why. They can't answer their why. So, with these different topics and categories, and I'll do one in regards to environmental depression. There's another one as seasonal depression. All of these play a factor into your overall well-being. So, so we're coming up on a seasonal change, and that's another reason for this specific podcast because we have less light now. You know, the sun is going to be going down a little bit earlier. You know, the holiday season is coming in. A lot of people don't have family or loved ones to go to, and they see all the TV shows about the wonderful dinner, the 10 places of the tables, 10 different chairs at the table, all the elaborate Christmas decorations, the holidays. A lot of people don't have that. So we know that around those holidays, there's an increase in suicide because of the sorrow. So I definitely want to be a little bit more progressive in what I'm offering to people to help them understand. Hey, it's only a couple months of that season and that time. You can make it through that. So this is just inspiration to do that. So I want to make sure, because once again, we have a couple more seconds. It goes so fast to highlight your business. You're a photographer. Anything you want to say about your business, give us your social media plug so that people can reach out to you and contact you if they want to get photographs taken for them and their family or just themselves.
Yeah, I'm on Facebook, Instagram, and I have a website.
Mm-hmm.
So my business is 311 Productions. The number 3, the word 11, and Productions. That's my name on Facebook. That's my name on Instagram. And I have a 360 photo booth. It's called Shots Fired Entertainment. Booking for Halloween coming up or whatever type of party you having. There's a lot of parties coming up soon. Thanksgiving, Christmas, whatever you celebrate. So we plans available. That's what I say all the
time. And she's very.
So I didn't hear you. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. I was just actually going to tell them just if you look on her Facebook, she actually just did me and my daughter's photo shoot. And guys, when I tell you we had to drive a distance to get to her, it was, for me, it was a lot because we had just come from church. So I was trying to make it on time. She was very understanding, very kind. I was getting my daughter dressed in the park in regards to putting her on her little tutu. And she just made it a very calming experience for us. It was my first time getting pictures taken with my daughter. So for me, it was just her understanding. I look for quality as far as customer service, as how a person deals with you. And so that was really appreciated. So make sure that you check her out. You can also look at my Facebook page. You'll see the pictures that she took of me and my daughter. She did a little collage today and uploaded a couple of them. So we appreciate that. So her is 311 Productions. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Let me drop the website. I forgot to drop the website. It's www.productions.com. So www.311productions.com.
Yeah, you guys.
And you can find information about the 360 booth on there too.
You heard it from herself, Miss Alisha. Listen, you want to go ahead and connect with her on social media. She's actually very funny and very real. She's very candid as far as her conversation, and she's not scared of clap back because she'll put a person in their place very politely and very tastefully. I love the boldness, but we all are in a time where we need more authentic people, that are not afraid because of social media. You have social media bullies and things like that. She's not afraid of any type of bullies. Okay, she can definitely hold her own in a classy, elegant way. That's what I appreciate. So you guys heard it from her. Make sure you check out her website, the photo booth, as well as her just She has a monumental mind of insight and actually business. She has given me a couple tips to actually help me with some things. I just listen to her and it just spews out of her mouth as far as things that may possibly, she's a wealth of information. That's what I would like to say, a wealth of information. So if there's nothing else, thank you guys so much for tuning into this podcast. It was such of a delight to be able to talk to her about this sensitive content. I know she's going further in life and going to do so much more because she has a drive and she's just different and peculiar. And I appreciate people when they can make time and come on the show, on the podcast and talk, even though they have a family and other things to do. So, Alisha, I definitely appreciate you. And guys, make sure you go to our Facebook page and look at those pictures. If there's nothing else, we're done with this segment in this episode of this show. Make sure you guys stay tuned because we're going to be doing more episodes in regards to interviewing other people, and you don't want to miss it because in October, I have a surprise for some things I'm going to be releasing to the people that are going to help them with some strategies and new coping skills. So you definitely want to stay tuned. Okay, everybody? So we'll get back with you with more content. You guys have a good day. Good morning, everyone. It is Patricia Tomlinson, your host of The Dialogue. Today, I am really excited. We are moving forward in our series dedicated to Mental Health and Depression Awareness Month. Today, as you guys know, we are interviewing different women that have had the opportunity to actually go through depression, but actually came out on the other side. So today we have a very important guest with us. I actually just met her. She was so beautifully amazing and extending the opportunity to allow me to interview her. So you're going to get an opportunity to talk to her, or I'll get an opportunity to talk to her. You'll get an opportunity to listen to her story in just a few moments. If you guys have not been tuned in, I just want to let you know that I am doing this series because I myself have been a survivor of depression on many different instances. And I have met as well as talked to many different people that have battled with depression, not just where they diagnosed themselves. Some people are also clinically depressed and diagnosed by doctors that have taken the necessary coping skills and measures necessary to come out of the darkness and turn the lights on. Okay. So if you have not been tuned in, you are more than welcome to go to Anchor, Spotify, Google, and check out the interviews that we have been doing. Okay. So this is another one of our interviews. And now today we have with us another guest. So I'm going to go ahead and allow her to introduce herself and you guys just come along on the ride with us. So hello, how are you?
Hey, Patricia. I'm good. Hi, all of our listeners. My name is Portia Mystique Steele, and I am very happy to be here.
And we thank you so much. I know that this is not necessarily a conversation or a topic that is comfortable to everyone all the time. So for you to take the opportunity as well as the time to talk to us, we feel really blessed to have your presence on the show. So thank you so much.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here. I mean, I know we just met, but we've had some deep conversations already.
Yes, we did. Yes, we did.
I'm excited to get into it.
Yes, I mean,
yeah, we did.
We did. I mean, it was like, you guys, I'm not going to tell everything that went on in this conversation, but when I tell you God was so in it, it was just question and answer. And she's all the way in a completely different city and state from me. I've never met her face to face. We never sat down and had coffee or tea. We literally met through Facebook Messenger. I don't know if I asked her a question or something. We went through the DMs and just started talking. And it was just like, I think we talked for probably like an hour or so, if I'm not mistaken.
I think so. We feel like, was it almost 2 hours? About 2 hours.
I think it was because it was like the questions, and you guys, I want to tell you how good God is because it was actually the revelation that I needed at the time. And so I want to talk to you guys, like, don't be offstandish when it comes to interacting and meeting people from different places, because she literally had the answer that I needed located all the way in the place that she was. I just had to put myself out there, open myself up to talk, and she had some wonderful insight. And that's what led me to ask her, like, hey, I would love for you to come on the podcast and share some of that insight on a different topic. And here we are today. So,
truly.
So, tell me a little bit about yourself. You did give us your name. What exactly is it that you do? What are you into? I want to make our listeners aware of the type of woman that you are, the capacity that you hold.
Yes. Well, I'm the CEO of Mystique Growth Publishing Services. So I help coaches transform their messaging and combine it with their story to publish an impactful book that generates more income and influence. I'm born and raised in Pittsburgh, PA, but I moved to Nigeria in 2019 to be with my now husband. So we just living it up over here.
Okay. Okay.
I got a lot going on, but where I've come from and where I am now and to where I'm going, it's been a journey, and I'm still in the middle of it. I'm still in the middle of that journey. Still have a long way to go. But God has been good, and what I've been able to achieve in such a short time. We'll talk about why it's been such a short time, but it's been truly a blessing, honestly.
And I can definitely see that just from, I mean, we talked through Messenger, but I'm not even going to lie. Literally, as I'm talking to you, I can just feel those cool chills that most people get when they feel like it's cold, but it's actually like the Holy Spirit moving on them. You have such of a beautiful spirit, and it's very calming. Very calming. And I love to have people on the show like that because it's an authenticity to where they know they've been through something, but they have the joy of the Lord on the other side. So I think, yeah, I think this is going to be amazing. And thank you so much for sharing that, you guys. We'll make sure to leave all her business and social media links and stuff like that towards the end of the podcast, because who knows, maybe someone will be inspired to tell their story after we do the session today, so we want to make sure that we link you, connect you to the people that can help you bring that to pass. Okay, so today we are talking about depression. You guys know that, like I said, I've been doing a series. I've interviewed about 5 or 6 women, including myself, in regards to depression. So, Ms. Steele, could you please tell us, when you think about the word depression, what comes to mind? How did this affect you? And how have you been able to navigate through depression?
Yeah. Depression was a tricky one for me because I didn't know that I had it. Even now, like, I've never been officially diagnosed. I've never seen anyone about it. I've never talked to anyone about it. But, it's become more mainstream to talk publicly about that sort of thing. And so through the mainstream definitions and conversations, I've been able to determine that, I think I was depressed for quite a bit of time. So my journey through that. So I actually had an amazing childhood. Oh my God, I loved life as a kid. I did amazing in school. But when I turned 16, things got a little crazy. So I was being sexually abused by somebody that I was close to, somebody in my household. And I grew up in a household where, we weren't really allowed to go out. We were strongly discouraged to go out, strongly discouraged. And I use that word intentionally, strongly discouraged, because it's not like, we're told that, oh yeah, you can do whatever you want. All you have to do is ask. All you have to do is let me know. But truth be told, if you did, there would be repercussions.
Okay.
So we were strongly discouraged not to go out, not to date, not to have social media. I wasn't allowed to go to college. I won a scholarship and was coerced into giving away my scholarship money to this individual. And so I spent from 16 to 26, so 10 years, this is my late teens, early adulthood, trapped in that situation with the emotional and sexual abuse, and I didn't know how to deal with it. There was no way out. So I thought, because it was very much like a cult, like family.
Yes.
So I thought there was no way out. That this is all I know, I don't know anybody on the outside. We're not really allowed to talk to relatives without relaying the conversation back to the individual.
Yes.
So everything was monitored. It was very oppressive. So in that time, I really was thinking, I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't know how I'm going to get through. This is my life, right? Like, this is never going to end. And when you're in it, they make sure to tell you that you want this forever, right? This is something that you're going to be part of forever. And you say yes because you don't know what else to say, because you're afraid, because you don't know anything else. And as a teen, I really didn't know anything else. We had moved from Pittsburgh to California, so I didn't know anybody there. We didn't have any family there. We left my hometown. So I really was, by myself. If I just left, where would I go? Who would I see? How would I survive? I had nothing. I knew nothing. But I really started to get heavy into prayer, because we weren't going to church or anything like that. But the power of God was always in me, even as a child. So around 17, 18, prayer became my thing. Like, my ability to pray had increased so much in such a short amount of time. And so here I was able to just sit and shut out the world and deeply meditate to the point where I would get answers. So I started doing that. And the answer that I kept hearing was the word endure. So I just had to continue to endure. I was 18 when I first started doing it. Like, endure? How? Like, literally, I'm asking God, I'm like, how, bro? How am I supposed to do this? So I did. I endured. And in that time, little stuff started happening. Little stuff. So when the depression really hit and I was spiraling out of control, it was to the point where I would look at myself in the mirror and I could just see I was emaciated. Like, I looked like I was malnourished. Now, everybody in the house was relatively healthy, but I was losing weight. I was developing dark circles around my eyes. My skin, I normally have chocolate skin. It was pale. Like, I was just looking ashy every day for no reason. Wow. It was getting bad. And God just kept telling me to endure. And so I decided I needed to do something. Now, as a kid, I grew up learning German because, Pittsburgh is, if you go to school in Pittsburgh, it's probably a German magnet school. So we learn German. So I needed to do something with my time in my life. I graduated high school, so I wasn't doing anything. So I hopped online to relearn German. And in that time, I came across a guy. And that guy and I, we spoke and we dated for 5 years. In secret. Nobody knew. I was in a house with 8 other people. Nobody knew. Wow. So we dated for 5 years. And in that time, I learned how to edit. I was editing for authors who were unpublished. So just writers who were posting their stories. I was editing for them. All in secret. Wow. On this beat up laptop that we had. And, I wasn't going anywhere. I wasn't doing anything. So I was just earning money, and it was just sitting in a PayPal account, not doing anything. Yet I was falling in love. So my sister, who I found out was going through the same thing I was going through, which is crazy. We're all living in the same house, and we don't know what's happening with each other. But I found out later that she was going through the same thing. And she told me, Portia, I'm either going to kill myself or we have to leave. And I was like, say less. No, so what I'm doing, I fasted for 4 days, for 3 or 4 days. And God gave me my answer. So I had about several $1,000s just sitting in my PayPal account. And we left in the middle of the night. I was 26. I'm 29 now, so this was only 3 years ago. Yes. So we packed our things. We packed our things. We left in the middle of the night. 3 months later, I hopped on a plane to see the guy that I had been dating online, and he happened to be Nigerian. So I flew to Nigeria. Wow. Saw him. The day that I arrived, he proposed to me. We got married 3 months later, and so here I am. We're still together. We've been married 3 years. Our third anniversary is this December. And my sister, she left. She moved to Indiana. She's in her final year of getting her bachelor's degree in game art design. So, we left. We had to leave, and that action, that step of actually taking control back in my life is what pulled me out of that depression. Not to mention that I was falling in love, which I think had a big that was a huge help. Being in love pulled me from that darkness.
But, of course. Yeah. I mean, so I'm not gonna cry, but stories like this definitely touch me. I am so sorry that you had to go through that for as long as you did. But I'm the type of person, I can see the beauty in tragedy. And you have a beautiful ending, which is not necessarily an ending. This is like a new beginning for you. Because as you came out, sometimes you go through transition. And when you go through that transition, just when you come out of the situation, most people don't understand. You still have to go through a transition where you feel safe and you're okay. And for some reason, it's so many things that are resonating with me as I'm talking to you. Like, most people don't know this, but I paint. And so it was one time I painted a picture, and it was a woman that just was floating in the air. She just looked at lifeless, but it was these hearts that were like balloons. And I don't know if you ever heard of that saying, or it's a song. It says, "Love lifted me when nothing else could help. Love lifted me." And that's what your story reminds me of. Just like how you said how you felt lifeless. Not that you felt lifeless, but when you looked in yourself in the mirror, you looked emaciated, your eyes, your weight, you looked, ash tone. It was for your benefit that you left. It gave you new life. And I commend you, because some people's darkness is in different levels, but for you to leave, most people may not have done it. Like you said, you were sheltered, so you didn't know what was outside. You didn't know how you were going to survive. But I also hear that you got your confirmation and uplifting from God, that inevitably He confirmed for you to leave. So this is a faith-based podcast. So I do have a lot of different people on, but I think that out of every story of a person I've talked to, their faith, their relationship with God, their relationship with Jesus Christ has been the catalyst for them to evolve out of darkness.
Yeah. I mean, it has to be, right? Like, me, I wasn't allowed to do anything. I wasn't allowed to go anywhere. So it's not like I knew the outside world. So I knew me and my sister, we were stepping into the unknown. If we didn't have faith, that would have been impossible. Without faith, we wouldn't have even taken that step, because there's such a huge unknown. We had no credit, no bank account, no nothing. Like, even the system didn't know. When I tried to get my first bank account, they were like, "Oh, we can't, because we tried looking you up and you have no credit. You're non-existent. You're not even a U.S. citizen." Like, technically I am. I got my ID and stuff. But like, as far as the economy is concerned, you don't exist. So it's like having all of this lack of information. You don't know where you're going to end up. You don't know what you don't know, and you don't know what to do. So then how do you then decide that I'm going to go ahead and do it anyway? I'm still going to leave. Well, it's just God. You have to have faith, because without faith, what are you doing? You just have logic. And for me, that's always been the biggest thing, the difference between logic and faith. So when you lack faith, you use logic. So you use your brain to figure out what's going to happen and how you're going to do this and how you're going to do that. But you can not use logic and use faith instead, especially in situations where you lack the knowledge. You literally don't know. You're ignorant about what's going to happen or what's going to come or what you're going to do. You can't use logic in that sense. If you don't have faith and you don't have logic, you're not going to do anything. There's nothing you can do. You'll just sit there. You're just there. So when you lack logic, you must use faith in order to take a step.
That is beautiful. That is beautiful. I mean, when I hear you say that, it's like, without faith, it's impossible to please Him. And the most beautiful part about it is that I'm going to use a story from the Bible. When you think about Adam and Eve, and how she ate from the tree. And it gave her knowledge that she wasn't supposed to have, because they were covered and they were sheltered until they got the knowledge that they were not. And so when you talk about logic, it can send you into all types of realms and dimensions of ways of thinking that we should not be thinking. And it can be destructive. If you rely on yourself, the knowledge of a human, yourself, instead of God. If you would have relied on yourself, fear might have stepped in. So, and I know because I've had experience with the cult as well. They make you feel guilty if you don't want what they want. They make you're isolated. So inevitably you're by yourself. So at that time you had God, you were able to break down those barriers of probably being institutionalized for years. So it's a beautiful thing through that prayer. God was preparing your mind to not take on the narrative of what another person said about you that would ultimately have kept you in bondage. And that's powerful, to walk through all those years and all that time. And God is just saying, endure, endure. And so that does answer the question. One of my questions is going to be, do you believe that you can be saved and still battle with depression? Because a lot of people don't understand that just because you're saved and you're battling with depression, a lot of people go through that. A lot of people endure the darkness while they're trying to walk towards the light.
Well, yeah, I think. See, I'm a different type of person though, so I wouldn't classify myself as a typical Christian.
Yes.
My husband, he's Catholic, but I'm a bit different in my own belief.
Okay.
But I think it's important for people to understand that whether you believe in Jesus Christ or you follow Jesus Christ and you believe in God, it doesn't matter. You're still human. We still have emotions the same way. It's still a chemical balance in the brain. It's still, you're still a human being. We all still function the same way, with or without faith. So I often get into heated discussions with individuals who try to say that, oh, well, I shouldn't be depressed because I have the Lord Jesus Christ at my back. That doesn't mean it. I mean, it's there, yes. And that's the power that's going to help me, but I'm still a human being who feels emotion, who feels pain, who can still have PTSD, who can still have flashbacks and triggers.
Yes.
That stuff is still there with or without God.
Yes.
So and I personally feel like faith was it was the anchor for me. Having faith, believing in God, and believing in my ability to pray, and knowing that God was going to have my back, that's an anchor. But God doesn't remove your ability to feel. And you said something earlier that's so profound, and I kind of just want to highlight, is that even after you've left the situation that you were in, there is still a very long transition period where you're still going to be battling the depression. Like for me, yeah, I left 3 years ago, but only like maybe a year ago did I stop having nightmares.
Yes.
Like after I left, I was having nightmares every single night. And people would say, oh, but you're not there. You're not there anymore. So it's okay. You're praying every day, aren't you? Yes, I am. But I still have a human brain. And trauma imprints itself on your brain. No, I'm not a neurosurgeon. I'm not a doctor. I don't have a medical degree, but I do understand to an extent that when traumatic events happen, they imprint themselves on your brain and it sticks in your memory.
Yes,
prayer is not going to remove that. Or I should say my faith is not going to remove that from happening. So it takes time to work through it, and you use faith as your anchor. So as you're going through that, you're going to feel the pain. You're going to feel that, and it's going to be there. But just thank God that you have faith to hold you down as you're passing through it.
Yes. And I mean, the one prophet in the Bible that had just did all the miracles and stuff like that, he went to the brook and he was depressed. He wanted God to take his life. And that was a suicidal thought. So it is very true. If you look in the Bible, there are so many people, like even David. David was running from Saul. That post-traumatic stress and the trauma after the encounter is still there. And this is why it is important to set yourself up to hear stories and testimonies, and actually also apply practical coping skills in order to navigate through it. That is the purpose of these episodes that we're doing, to give you practical tools to implement in your life to come out of darkness, which is depression. Everybody uses something different. Your tool was prayer. I also want to ask you, in that time that you were there, did you ever journal? I know you said it, that you were helping other people. Did you ever journal or write about anything?
I did, and I think that was one of my saving graces. So I had like 3 or 4 diaries, thick ones too, in the last 4 years that I was there. And what I found, and this kind of goes into what I do in my business, but what I found was the moment that you start to write your story, you start to remove the emotional attachment to it that causes you to feel some type of way, that causes you to feel your depression or your trauma. I was able to write my story and identify who I had been being. I know that sounds crazy, but just follow me. So as I wrote my story, I could objectively look at my life and say, here are all the things that happened to me. Now, while I was living that, oh my gosh, did I feel like I was going to die, felt like I was either going to commit homicide or suicide, didn't know which one. This was just a mess. This is what I was feeling like as I was living it. But when I wrote it and I read it back to myself, I could then identify those moments objectively. I'm not living in it. I kind of stepped away from the frame and looked at the picture for what it was. And at that point, and let me tell you, even though I was journaling while I was in it, it wasn't until after, like years later, when I read what I wrote, did it start to have the effect on me. So you have to write it and then read it. But yeah, when I went back and I read it, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is not who I want to be. This is not the portion of Mystique that I want to be. Because before I was a submissive daughter, but to my siblings I was hardened and emotionless and passive. I don't want to be that. But it wasn't until I read my writing that I recognized that that's who I was. And even when I entered my marriage, I was thinking, oh man, I gotta be this Nigerian wife. I gotta learn Igbo culture. I gotta do all this. I gotta do that. These are the expectations that I thought was being placed on me, not by my husband, but just like I thought it was there by the general culture. The nation was putting this on me as an American woman stepping into Nigeria, marrying a Nigerian man. So all these expectations defined my identity. So by the time I came here, I didn't know what my favorite food was. I didn't have a favorite color. I didn't really know what I liked or didn't like, because my whole life I just spent living up to somebody else's expectations of who I should and shouldn't be. So that's who I became. But after I wrote it all down and I read it, I was like, ooh, who is this? Who is this woman? It's not who I want to be. So writing it down allows me to rebuild my identity. So the woman that I am now is not who I was 3 years ago. And I know for some people, they'll say, oh, that's only 3 years. But in 3 years, I've done so much for myself. So I wrote my story. Then I read it. Then I shared it. Then I called my dad, who I hadn't spoken to since I left, and was like, I want you to know that I recognize everything that was going down, and it was not okay. I faced all of that. And most people, they don't, right? They just leave the situation and try to block it off. But you can't. You have to address it and become very present to it. So I did. I became present to my story. I became present to who I've been being. And I became present to my father, who was the epicenter of all of this.
Wow.
And once I became present to that, I shed tears. I literally literally cried on my husband's shoulders for maybe like an hour after I got off the phone with my dad. Then I started writing. Then after I got done writing and I read it back, I was like, I'm a new woman. I'm a new woman now. And you could just think that was like 3 hours. That took 3 hours to have that transformation. But those were the steps that I took to transform. And after that moment, literally that day, the day that I called my dad was the night that the nightmare stopped. I stopped having nightmares once I called him. And then it just got better and better as I was writing. Then I started sharing. Then I was going on stages to speak about it and different shows to speak about it. And I was helping coaches write their story. So, like, I really, really stepped into my authenticity of the situation and who I was being and who I was pretending to be. And being present to that truth gave me the ability to live the truth that I actually want to live, to create my identity for myself and not for anybody else. And so, no, I'm not depressed, but I know people in my situation, even my sister, they've not had that transformation because they refuse to do that. It's really hard to stand in front of that thing and say, this is what's happened.
Absolutely.
And it's okay.
Absolutely.
And I think